So what you're looking at right now is part of a wall in my living room that has just framed certificates of training and different things that I've gotten from various jobs in my life. Just something to have up to decorate the walls and remind me of the hard work that I've done. Sorry about the lighting. It's not the greatest right here. It'll get better in a second. But this one right here, I just put up. And what that is, if I can get in just a little closer, but it's hard to make out. It's actually a printed out email that I got back in 2012. And that's what I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to swing around here where the light's a little better. There we go. It's about as good as I could do in the conditions of my apartment currently. But that email that I just framed and put on my wall is very important to me, very special. To explain it, we go back to the year 2005. I was living in Seattle, and at the time, my main focus was training and teaching martial arts. That's what I was doing. But of course, I needed a job, and I got hired with an ambassador program for downtown Seattle in a business improvement district. So the ambassadors, they kind of look like security, but that's not really what we were. And we patrolled the sidewalks and enforced sidewalk codes, which meant interacting with homeless people quite a bit, both positive and negative interactions, because we also did outreach. But we also helped tourists find things, gave out a lot of different types of information, checked in with the businesses, that kind of thing. And it was a great job because my background at that point was mostly hotel customer service stuff, like being a bellman or room service. And then I had done security for a little while before that. I had just gotten into security. So it was the best job I've ever had. And a big part of the reason why it was the best job is because of the management that was there at that time, who I'm mostly going to be talking about in this video. So when I first started there, the grapevine was, and that, as like most jobs, I guess, but stories flying around left and right. But I mean, the moment that I started, people found out, oh, you're a martial arts instructor. So they started coming up to me and asking me all sorts of self-defense questions, like, what would you do if someone grabbed you? What if somebody tried this? What if they tried that? So I went to my supervisor and I said, hey, do we get any type of training? And they said, oh yeah, the Seattle police had given some training in the past, but no one that I spoke with was happy with what they were taught. It was not quality from what I could gather. So I started thinking about it and I said, well, I could easily design a very just basic self-defense course. And, where I originally had learned, one of the philosophies was you should be able to teach anybody. You modify the techniques for, their level of fitness, height, all that kind of stuff. And that workforce there was pretty diverse. I mean, we had 18-year-olds on the way up to like 70-year-olds, men, women, people in great shape, people in not so great shape, so I knew that I could design something that I could teach to everybody there and just help everyone be a little bit safer. So when I had first floated the idea to my original supervisor, he was, oh yeah, sounds great, so I waited a little while. I'd been there for a couple weeks, and then I floated it again, and then he kind of brushed me off. We get training from PD, so don't worry about it, basically. And I thought, well, okay, what are you going to do? Luckily, about a week after that supervisor got fired. And new supervisor came aboard. That company promoted from within, totally. So no one from the outside. So this guy came over from another team. Another great thing about that company, we worked in actual teams. So everyone on a team had a supervisor and an assistant supervisor. all work the same hours, the same schedule, same days off. So you really bonded with everybody, got to know everybody, learned to work well. Of course, there were personality conflicts from time to time, but the supervisors had to deal with that. So we got a guy from another team that came over, and he's one of the best guys I've ever worked with. Really intelligent, really smart. Guy by the name of Brian. Really mild mannered, really easygoing. And a big part of that job was patrolling on bikes, rode bicycles around downtown Seattle. I mean, talk about a fun job. Well, let's go hang out down on the waterfront, you know. Anyway, and he had ran his own pedicab business. So he was, you know, he was pretty savvy, pretty smart guy. Knew a lot about bikes. And anyway, as soon as he came over, I asked him, and he was just all about it. So that would be great. We need that training. If you can do it, you know, he was all for it. So a little while after that, I approached our safety manager, a gentleman by the name of Mr. David Willard, affectionately known as Dub, because he has a little bit of more than a passing resemblance to a certain former U.S. president. And just so happens he is the author of that email that I just framed and put on my wall, which I will get to. That's what this is all leading up to. So I asked Dave about it. I said, listen, I can teach martial arts. I can make something that I know. In fact, behind me, those are my certificates on the wall for martial arts. I said, I know that I can make a course that you will like. Guarantee it. So Dave is a career naval man and just a great guy. He's all about training, all about mentoring. And, you know, if you had talents, he wanted to use them. Absolutely. So he listened to what I had to say and he said, well, type something up and we'll talk about it. Boom. Went home, pulled out my notebooks and just went over all the basic techniques. And, you know, from training, it was not that hard. I just kind of started paring stuff down to the essentials, you know, your basic wrist grab escapes and, you know, how to ground yourself and keep from getting picked up. If somebody grabs you, you know, you block it out, step back, put your hands on the hips. Somebody grabs your throat, you know, things like that. So I typed it up and I think it was only like a little 2-page course, actually. And dropped it off in his office. A couple of days later, he called me and sat me down. And man, his eyes, he was looking at it. He had the paper in his hand. He's like, well, he's like, I'm real excited about this. This looks really good. He goes, this is just funny. He goes, I had a couple of these make me a little nervous. And I said, really, what? And he said, well, like this one here, it says throat grab escape. And I said, oh, okay, what's making you nervous about it? He said, well, you're grabbing their throat. And I said, no, they're grabbing you by the throat. You're just escaping. And his eyes, he went, oh, that sounds cool. Oh, man. So we scheduled a day. And I remember I'd only been there for a couple months. So I was still kind of the new guy. But my team had gotten to know me by that point. Because like I said, you work with the same people every day. Brian had total trust and faith in me. So we picked a day. And Dave was at our deployment in the morning, and HR was there. And I did my little demo. And then I was like, okay, everybody up. And everybody just kind of was like, oh, what are we doing? And Dave hopped up and he's like, yeah, come on. So I had everybody pair up. And we went over the techniques one by one. I demonstrated, had everybody practice, went around adjusting everyone, had them all sit down, did a little Q&A afterwards. And by the end of it, man, everybody was like, whoa, that was great, you know? So after the class, Dave said that was excellent, it went really well. HR was happy. Dave said, okay, we got to do the other 2 teams now. So I remember, I'm still, like I said, kind of the new guy. So I did the other 2 teams, went just as good. Everybody was happy. Fast forward several months later, 2 supervisor positions became open at the same time. And at that point, I was ready. I had never been in a supervisory position before, but I felt like I could definitely step into the role. So I applied. interviewed for it, got it. And wasn't too long after I took over a different team. I went over to Team 2. It wasn't too long after that, Dave said, hey, we need to schedule another round of that training. I said, okay. So I talked to the other 2 supervisors. We worked it out. I sent out the email with calendar dates, all that. And this time around, at one of the trainings, the operations manager, the top person in that whole company, Ms. Peggy Dreisinger, she came in. She'd heard about the training, obviously, and I'm sure she had looked it over the notes and everything. She wanted to see what it was all about. So she came in, sat down at the table, and she said, no, I'm not going to participate. I'm just going to watch. So no pressure, right? Just the big boss, new supervisor and all that. So I did the class, and she sat there and just laughed and, watched and had a great time. So after the Q&A and all that, everybody, of course, turned and looked at Peg. Okay. And Peg sat there, she's very elegant, very, very proper lady, had her hands folded, and she just thought for a second, didn't say anything, and she said, I think this training is fantastic, and I'm going to write it into policy that all teams have to do it twice a year. I mean, what could I say? That was one of the best moments of my life, and certainly of all the jobs I've had, one of the best moments. So I of course made more work for myself because with the schedule, I always had to come in on one of my days off to teach one of the teams, but I didn't care. I for one, I was salary, and for 2, I enjoyed it, and I knew that it was a good thing. It was making a difference. And there was one team that had a gentleman that had boxed. I think he was an amateur, maybe semi-pro. Might have been pro. I don't remember, honestly. But other than him, there was no one there really that had any previous martial arts or fighting experience. So I knew that none of these folks had really had the opportunity, and they might not have really even wanted to do it. But after every single class, they were always smiling, happy, going to get their radios and going out into the field in a good mood. And one of the classes I distinctly remembered, after I did my Q&A session, I said, okay, that's it. And everybody clapped for, it seemed like good 30 seconds of just applause. What could I do but just take a bow? And then afterwards, I was in the supervisor office, like hyperventilating, and Brian goes, I can't believe you really get nervous doing this. And I said, well, yeah, it's a little bit of pressure. I mean, when I'm out there, I'm fine. But afterwards, it's, like, whoa, just dodged a bullet. And Brian said, well, you're really good at it. Anyway, these are all memories that are just really special to me, just awesome. And so 2011, I resigned from the company and moved back to Reno. And exactly a year later, the date on this email is May 2012. And my last day there was late April 2011. So 1 year later, I get this email. And I'll just read it real quick. It says, we had an incident last week where 3 ambassadors actually got assaulted by a mentally ill transient. A certain ambassador happened to be one of them. While talking to her after the incident, her exact words were, I could just kiss Jesse for his safety tactics training. Just having that training under her belt made her feel safer and less vulnerable during the ordeal. Well done, dude. I mean, for me, that's about as awesome as it gets. Well done, dude. I mean, enough said. How many people can honestly say that a year after they left the job, they got an email from their former boss telling them that what they did while they worked there still was making a difference, and they still appreciated it. So that's just that's one of the best things that's ever happened in my life. And I printed that email out, and I just kind of had it stored with my records, and a while back, I just kept thinking, yeah, I need to go get a frame. I need to put it on the wall. I need to get, and it's one of those things that just keeps slipping my mind. And, this week, a few days ago, I said, I'm got to make this happen now. I want that on my wall. So there it is. And, I'm still friends with Dave and Peggy to this day. They're both very, very dear friends of mine. Peggy's retired. She's on cruise ships all the time, just enjoying life. Dave's working at another business improvement district in Hawaii, of all places. And I just talked to him on the phone not too long ago. So, man, it's so special because no other job I've ever had has allowed me to contribute. I always tell them, like, these are the things that I can do. And that's not all I did at the mid. I did other types of trainings and really helped out with training new ambassadors and came up with a whole protocol, this sort of thing. And I tell them, like, I can do this stuff. If you let me, I can design. And most of the time, they're just like, yeah, whatever. They just blow me off. Sometimes I just have to do it anyway. I'll create stuff just because they have me training people. And I'm like, okay, I need to write all this out. And, then they're always happy about it. But no other job has allowed me to contribute to that level and has been that appreciative. So, Dave and Peggy, thanks for doing that for me. It was one of the most awesome things ever. And Dave, that email is one of my most prized possessions, man. Well done, dude. I'll never forget that.